Hello all, good afternoon. This is another assignment in Unity Fundamentals, Assessment Round 1. Round 1, assignment number 5. There are two questions we have to answer. Suppose you have a player and a bunch of enemies and you only want the collision to happen between player and enemy. There should not be any collision between enemies and enemies. How do you solve this problem? Okay, I got this. Next, what is rigid body and what are the different types of rigid bodies? Suppose you have a player, a bunch of enemies, and the player can collision with enemies, but enemies should not collision in between. Like enemies won't should not be collision. So for this, we can we can achieve this by using physics layers and collision matrix in the Unity. First of all, we have to make a two physics layers, naming player layer and enemies layer, and then we have to create player objects and enemy objects. For player character, we have to set the layer as a player layer, which has we already created, and for all the rest of the enemies, we have to set the physics layer as the enemy layer, and then we have to move to the edit project setting. Physics layer is the one object, and there will be two layers, and below that there will be collision matrix. We have to remove the collision between same type of objects like enemies and enemies. We have to remove the collision so they won't collide each other. This is how we achieve the collision between enemies and players, and there will be no collision between enemies and enemies. Okay, what is rigid body? What are the different types of rigid bodies? Rigid body is a component in the for a game object. It is a component for a game object which is as properties of physical, which will work on physical forces like mass, gravity, velocity, force. These are properties of the rigid bodies. And when we assign a rigid body, it will behave in the physics simulation. Like different types of rigid bodies: dynamic rigid body, kinematic rigid body, and static rigid body. Dynamic rigid body, it is like it will have physical collisions and it can move like uh, it will be affected by the physical forces like gravity and mass. Dynamic and it can move depending upon the force applied and gravity. It can move by affecting gravity. It will fall down if there is no collision, and it will detect the collision as well. Okay. The dynamic rigid body will affect by the physical forces like mass and gravity, and it will move from one position to another position by collisions and other methods, position change, and it will fall down like if the dynamic rigid body will fall down if there is no collision or there is no platform for the players. It can be mainly used for interacting objects and player characters like that. Dynamic rigid body, and the next one is kinematic rigid body. It won't affected by the physical forces like mass and kinematic gravity, but it will move from one position to another position by applying the forces. Okay, and the last one is static rigid body. Static rigid body will dynamic also. These are all rigid body will static rigid body to detect the collision with dynamic rigid body and kinematic rigid bodies, but it won't move from one location to one position to another position. Mostly static rigid body will be used for walls, platforms, and mostly non-moving objects. Okay, static. It won't affected by the any physical forces, but it detects the collision with dynamic as well kinematic rigid bodies. And Dynamic also detects rigid body, detects collision, but it can move from one position to another position by applying the forces, but it won't have physical forces like gravity and mass. And dynamic rigid body will have gravity, mass, as well as it can move from one location to another location based on the velocity and speed forces applied. These are the different types of rigid bodies and rigid body definition. Okay, thank you. That's all. Only two questions in this assignment. Thank you, one and all. Hope I'm doing well.